What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. Today, we're going to be exploring what could have happened to Master Yoda if he had defeated Darth Sidious at the end of Revenge of the Sith. Not gonna lie, when I first started making this video, I was a little skeptical on Yoda winning just because of how powerful Darth Sidious was, but as I went back through and watched the duel again, I picked up on some stuff that I had forgotten about and realized this fight was actually really close. Not to mention, it seemed like Darth Sidious did not want to face Yoda one-on-one, telling me that Yoda was a little bit more of a threat than we may have realized. This what if storyline takes place in the same universe as the previous one I did, which explored Commander Cody and Obi-Wan's story if he had disobeyed Order 66. But enough talk. Don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button and let's get started. One of the toughest parts of making this particular what if was coming up with and writing Yoda's dialogue. He doesn't say a whole lot in the movies, and what he does say is in that curious way of speaking, and so what I decided to do is write all of Yoda's internal monologue normally, and then anything he says out loud will be in his backwards way of speaking. I figured this way it would make it easier for me to write and easier for you and myself to understand what's going on, because sometimes it can take a second to unpack what he's saying. With that out of the way, let's get to the story. Yoda watched as Obi-Wan and Cody left for Mustafar with grief in his heart, knowing there were few closer in the Jedi Order than Anakin and Obi-Wan, and now surely only one could walk away from the fight they were about to have. Once they had gone, his thoughts turned to Palpatine, or Sidious as he was now known, who had been hiding right under the nose of the Jedi this whole time. Truly, the shroud of the dark side had fallen over them. But there was still a scrap of hope. Sidious had not yet announced everything to the Senate and was most likely alone with Anakin gone and in his quarters preparing to address the Senate. Still weak from his duel with Mace, it was time to face the Sith Lord himself and see how powerful he had become. Come, the time has, sighed Yoda to himself, and with a slight grunt, slid from his seat and shuffled off to a secret path that led directly to the Galactic Senate building, intent on bringing the rule of Sidious to an end once and for all. Night had fallen on Coruscant, and in the wake of the chaos of the attack a little while earlier and the execution of Order 66, the Senate building was mostly empty, save for a few squads of shock troopers who acted as nothing more than distractions for Yoda as he made his way to Sidious's office, which sat beneath the massive Senate rotunda. Ever since he had decided to face Sidious, resolve and calm had replaced darkness and confusion. His path was clear, and this gave Yoda a strength he hadn't felt in a long time. He entered the room in which Sidious sat, preparing, and as the red guards at the door raised their weapons to him, Yoda sent them smashing against the wall and crumpling to the ground without raising his hand. "I hear a new apprentice you have, Emperor, or should I say, Darth Sidious?" "Master Yoda," crooned Sidious, "you survived." And Yoda could detect a sense of annoyance and foreboding in his words. "You were foolish to come here tonight," snarled Sidious. "You should have fled while you had the chance. No, it was you who was foolish in thinking that destroying the Jedi, the clones would be fruitful." With a snarl of rage, Sidious launched a stream of lightning at Yoda, and before he could stop it, he was flung back across the room. "Your temple has been sacked. Your generals are dead. I took your precious chosen one for my apprentice. The clones did everything they were supposed to do. Yet here I stand, and great displeasure it brings you. Not as fruitful as you might have hoped, I presume," Yoda said as he got to his feet, and with that he sent a powerful forced push in Darth Sidious's direction. Perhaps because he was still weakened from his duel with Mace, Sidious wasn't able to block the blast in time and was launched off his feet and sent flying back over his desk. The final duel had begun. "The Jedi are finished," howled Palpatine as he struggled to his feet and attempted to flee out of the room, but Yoda was quicker and leaped in front of him, blocking his path. "If so powerful you are, why leave?" And with that, Yoda ignited his lightsaber and faced down Palpatine. With a cackle of unhinged glee, Sidious ignited his blade and the two launched themselves at each other. Dueling Mace was one thing, but crossing blades with Master Yoda was a challenge unlike anything Sidious had ever faced. Constantly flipping off things and around him, it was impossible to get a clear hit, and Sidious was forced to stay on the defensive to prevent Yoda from gaining the upper hand. Still, Sidious knew his plan was too far set in motion to be stopped now. Darth Vader would become more powerful than any of them, and the time of the Sith had been secured. With a cackle of glee, he thrust himself more aggressively at Yoda, giddy with a deranged sense of euphoria at how well things had turned out. The fear he had felt earlier was gone. He was invincible, and yet, as they dueled across the room, his mood faltered a little. He had not expected Yoda to survive and come after him, and if he had survived, maybe Kenobi, that constant thorn in Sidious's side, had survived as well and was going after Darth Vader. The thought made him boil with rage. Kenobi would not ruin his plans again. "It's time for this to end," Sidious hissed at Yoda as the two battled up onto a podium. He hit a button on the control panel and the entire roof began to open as the podium extended itself upward into the massive rotunda that was the Galactic Senate. The podium lifted them up into the center of the massive room, lightsabers flashing and sizzling as they met faster and faster until they became a green and red blur. Palpatine was starting to gain the upper hand as Yoda had much less to jump off of and was forced into a smaller area to stand and fight, with his height now being a disadvantage as well. But Yoda didn't waver and met blow for blow with a seemingly boundless energy. Sidious, still weakened from his fight with Mace, began to realize he could not best Yoda with the blade. So with a heavy blow to his opponent, Sidious made a tremendous leap backwards and landed among a row of hover platforms. Sidious began picking up other platforms with the Force and began hurling them at Yoda. It was now a duel of the Force. Yoda leapt from platform to platform, dodging the flying platforms as best he could. Sidious had the high ground, and Yoda knew there was no chance of winning this way, so with considerable effort, he caught the next platform that came at him and slowly began to spin it faster and faster. He could hear Sidious laughing somewhere up above him, so he sent the now spinning platform in Sidious's direction, who was forced to leap out of the way and tumble into a nearby platform. Yoda leapt up onto the platform Sidious had just fallen into and ignited his blade, ready to finish him once and for all. But Sidious was ready and sent a blast of lightning at Yoda, knocking the lightsaber out of his hand. The two faced off once again, straining with bolts of crackling energy caught between them. As the two strained and slowly got closer to each other, Yoda could see the smirk of triumph leaving Sidious's face. He began to strain harder against Yoda. Yoda knew this was it. The shockwave when the two forces met would send them both flying off the platform, most likely to their deaths. So be it, he thought grimly. Your reign is at an end, Sidious, and not short enough it was, Yoda growled. Never, shrieked Sidious. If you strike me down, I will rise more powerful than you have ever seen. And with that, the energy in their hands met, blasting them both over the edge, plummeting to the floor of the rotunda. Yoda managed to glance off the side of the podium they had been fighting on minutes before, and as he slid down it, he was able to grab onto the remains of a nearby platform to prevent himself falling all the way to the ground. Palpatine's body had gone flying by, and he had not attempted to try and redirect his flight. And as Yoda dropped the rest of the way to the ground and lay there, Sidious's last words came back to him. What had he meant he would rise more powerful than before? That, mixed with the fact that Palpatine hadn't tried to save himself by redirecting his fall, worried Yoda. Something sinister was at play here. What had Sidious learned that made him unafraid of death in this way? His thoughts were cut short as blaster fire erupted around him. Shock troopers had converged on the Senate rotunda and had made their way within range and were trying to shoot him. Weakened from his duel, it was all Yoda could do not to get hit as he staggered to a nearby wall, which gave him temporary cover. He knew he was not strong enough to fight them, nor did he have a desire to slay any more clones, who had once been such loyal allies. Yoda summoned his lightsaber, which had landed a short way away, and looked around for escape. Nearby, he noticed a maintenance shaft just big enough for him to crawl through. He ripped the grate off and crawled in just as the clones reached the ground floor and began sweeping it looking for him. He crawled through the pipes looking for some kind of release or drainage opening, and then when he last found one that looked out over the city, he collapsed. He needed to rest for a bit and regain his strength. When Yoda had recovered sufficiently, he sent out a signal to Kenobi, who had just returned to the planet. After a short while, a nondescript taxi pulled up under the pipe. Had a good meeting with the Emperor, I presume, smiled Kenobi. His robes were burnt and torn, but he was alive. At an end, the reign of Sidious is, sighed Yoda wearily as they sped off. Almost too late I was to stop him, but the damage inflicted by Mace, the needed advantage gave me. Well, it sounds like we have much to discuss then, said Obi-Wan, and he proceeded to recount his and Cody's experiences on Mustafar. Yoda watched as the medical droid wrapped up and checked the babies Padme had given birth to. On hearing what had happened to Anakin, she had been so distraught it had been necessary to sedate her in order to prevent her from hurting herself and the children by accident. What are we going to do now, Master? Obi-Wan asked. Even though Sidious and Vader had been defeated, Order 66 was still in effect and the clones were hunting the Jedi all across the galaxy as they spoke. After the death of Sidious, his right-hand man Mas Amedda had called an emergency session and had announced that the Jedi had betrayed the Republic and killed Chancellor Palpatine, thus turning the entire Republic against the Jedi, save for a few. One of them being Bail Organa, who said he would be more than happy to take in Padme and her children and give them a home on Alderaan. Time for the Order to end it was, Yoda said. From the path we have strayed. Corrupt and proud we became. Fear of losing the power we had gained blinded us to the dark side and how to overcome it. For now, go to the planet Dagobah we will, build a new order and gather new survivors. Wait until ready for us the galaxy is before we return. That could be a very long time, maybe even the rest of our lives, Kenobi mused. Sooner than we may think, replied Yoda, thinking back to what Sidious had said. Not gone yet the dark side is. Go find what Sidious knew we must, if we are ever to know if he is really gone. this was definitely the most complicated what if I have done so far. There were so many different scenes to build, and the Galactic Senate building is not an easy place to make even just small sections of it, but I hope you enjoyed what I put together. The next one is going to be much simpler, but stay in the same time frame of Order 66, as there are just so many different stories to explore, and it's one of the most pivotal time periods in all of Star Wars. Don't forget to let me know what you thought of the story and Mocs down below in the comments, and I will catch you in the next one, but until then, happy building.